So let's talk about the Zambian president. Hakainde Hichilema has touched down in both Paris and London over the past week to discuss debt and trade. In Zimbabwe, the fourth structured dialogue on the country's debt arrears was held in Harare on Monday, with the AFDB chief, Dr. Ochieno, and the former Mozambican president, Ochieno, in attendance. Today, news came in that Zimbabwe has devalued its currency, down some 14% against the American greenback at the country's central bank auction. Let's dive into these two economists now with Joseph Ochieno. He is a political economist and international journalist based in Kampala, Uganda. We thank you very much for sticking around with us for tonight. You understand the electricity issue over there in Kampala with the power outage?
You embarrass me like that, but no, Africa needs to be embarrassed because it's a terrible situation. We are discussing economics, aren't we, Bolson? But well, congratulations to Arise Television Network, and as a matter of disclaimer, I did not participate in the voting, but of course I would have voted for you as the best network. But back to this. It is extraordinary that we are having this conversation because understandably for Zimbabwe, that has been facing sanctions for over a decade, rough sanctions, and I believe in many cases possibly unjustifiably. In Zambia's case has been before President Hichilema has been by and large incompetence over the last 10 or so years. The Zambian president is trying his level best to, woo investors, woo interest, global interest, build confidence around the economy and build confidence over and around Zambia generally. But I think by the time he came in, the pot had really gone rather too deep. And that really is the tragedy they're facing. But how much they're able to do, I don't know. I'm still much more confident about him than anybody else if they were at the helm in Zambia. But as I say, in the Zimbabwean case, slightly different question because I think by and large it was sanctioned. And also credit to President Mnangagwa, he's also tried to woo the global community. But, the underlying things would normally be very much about how much we are doing as a continent, in this case, these two countries, how much they're doing to try and inject, resources where they really, really clearly matter in order to make sure that, well, they ignite the economy, how much they're able to check inflationary tendencies, which tend to be the biggest issues here, and how much, of course, as I say, the productive sectors in those two economies are impacted. I think in both cases there are challenges because in Zimbabwe's case, it's agriculture, it's coming by and large late. But credit to them, they did quite well when it came to tobacco up to the last round of harvest. But at the moment, they're still struggling hugely with particularly inflation.
Well, do you think the discussions on debt arrears and restructuring are taking too long, and why?
They would. As I said, both countries, by the way, in the last 20 years or so rounds of debt relief keeping programs as they were, I actually actively campaigned around this debt, and I fundamentally believed that at the time, what you call them debt relief, I didn't like those terms because they mainly those days, dictatorial regimes across the continent at the time, who were basically bad borrowers, and given monies to them by bad lenders who badly and massively abused these monies. The continent has had debt relief, debt forgiveness over the last, 10, 15, 20 years ago. What happened to the Jubilee 2000? I think we're just bad with these things. Now, partly because of that, and partly because Africa got away with quite a lot, with a huge amount of goodwill. At the moment, I think most, particularly the Western Bretton Woods guys, would be rather cautious considering whether or not, even if they gave us debt relief, we'll learn any lessons, we'll begin to make sure that we don't punch above our weights, we are not able to deal sufficiently with corruption, invest appropriately, invest in health, invest in education, invest in areas where there is bound to be apparent productivity within maybe 2, 3, 4 to 5 years' time.
Yes.
I think that's the problem. China may be able to do that, but in China's case, I think, if anything, they tend to be the less kinder when it comes to debt. The only thing is that they are trying very hard to woo Africa. So maybe from that point of view, it may be possible that we will get some debt relief. But no, it's a process. And as I said, at the moment, it will need to be much more politics and perhaps much more public campaign once again before we see this. So no, it's not a roundtable discussion today and next week you get the results. No.
But do you see any real progress for Zimbabwe? The Fourth Structured Debt Forum was held on Monday. Do you see any real progress on the ground in terms of how the country is moving forward? And do you think Africa will get any relief anytime soon on this G20 framework, whether it's with the Chinese and the Paris Club, whatever?
I think I am more optimistic today than I was a few years ago, in part because the current Zimbabwean president has got a slightly different tone. He's tried very, very hard, number one. Number two, they've talked slightly loudly also over issues and things to do with corruption. Number three, as I said, they had really bumper harvest when it came to talk. And number four, of course, they are trying very much to convince the international community that they're now much more open about land reforms, which particularly the Western countries have been very particular. So from that end, it's possible that this will happen as far as Zimbabwe is concerned.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph Ochieno, and for congratulating Arise News on our awards as the best TV station in Nigeria. You're the first to congratulate us live internationally, and we say thank you very much for being our first. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Enjoy your evening and hope you get this electricity back, as it were. Thank you so much, political economist and international journalist out of Kampala, Uganda tonight.